school, I was making YouTube videos, YouTube content. I was in a sketch group. I studied at UCB, and we started a sketch group and doing branded content. And all of that led to making my first, my biggest budget at that point, which was a web series called Gente-fied, that macro finance. And it was like this $100,000 web series. And I thought it was, and I wrote so many locations and so many goddamn actors in that thing, and it was crazy. But we shot the web series, and as we were looking for distribution for the web series, they submitted it to Sundance, and we premiered at Sundance and ended up selling it as a series to Netflix. And so my way in was by doing web series, and on the heels of the success of things like Insecure and Atlanta, and what was the other ones, like Broad City and Teachers, and all these amazing web series I went on to turn into TV series. That's what basically happened. And so I got to, with Linda Yvette Chavez, who's the co-creator, we wrote the series together, and we went and shot the thing, and I directed the first 2 episodes of the first season. And so I went from doing tiny budget, with a crew of 10 people, to then directing a pilot of a series and writing an entire series with Linda. And so that was my weird backwards way in. Yeah. Not the common way that people get into TV, but yeah, basically by not waiting for permission is, I guess, what I would say.
No, that's a good, and we'll get into more advice too, and also hear more about what that was like to go from, this is what this panel's all about, going from shorts to doing something much more episodic. So we can talk more about that in a bit, but Auri, let's hear your story of going from development exec to literary agent, but where did it all begin?
Do people really want to hear the story of an agent?
Yes.
Please.
I'm surrounded by a creator panel. When I was doing development at Trevor Noah's company, I just took a look at the landscape, and there was a lot of acquisitions happening, and I thought to myself that the role of the development job was going to get smaller and smaller. And this was in 2019, so before the pandemic. Disney had already bought Fox, and I had started to toy with the idea of representation because I always had this idea in my head that if you're a rep, whether a manager or an agent, you can sustain what's going on in Hollywood based on your book of business. And so I decided to pivot. First the pandemic hit, and
very pivotal time.
Very pivotal. So it forced me to do it sooner rather than later, and I found myself at Gersh, where I wanted to be at an agency like Gersh, where it was growing, but it wasn't any of the top 3, where it wasn't a more hands-on experience with the rep and the client. And Gersh was the only agency that didn't make me pick a lane. I had a feature-heavy background and wanted to do TV. And so Bob Gersh said, you could come here and do both. And here I am. And it's been challenging, but I'm so grateful that I made the pivot when I did, because development jobs did continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and there's still contraction in that part of entertainment. So here I am.
Tell me about the spark that got you to development in the first place, pre even getting to Trevor Noah's company.
Well, I had worked at Summit Entertainment beforehand, and Summit was the home of the Twilight films. We were an independent studio, and at the risk of sounding crass, we were rich. And we were paying development money to develop projects, and we were buying stuff with the intention of making it, not just shelving it. And I just really liked the process of putting together something from inception to the screen. One of my most memorable projects working there at Summit was Perks of Being Wallflower. And it's a book that I had read in, I believe, middle school or high school. And the development process was fun. We found a writer, found a director. Turns out that the writer of the book wanted to direct the feature. We gave him a shot, and Steven Shofsky now is a very highly sought-after director. So that's what really inspired me to go into development, just the opportunity to put something together from beginning to end.
Nice, and that's a great film too, by the way.
Yeah.
Meera, what was the spark that got you into directing?
Oh, madness, mental illness of some kind, I'm sure. I just always wanted to do it. I watched, just kind of preferred it to reality movies and TV growing up, the way I think we all end up here for the same reason. But I went to film school. I did that route. To mixed results in terms of its utility. But I met, all my kind of collaborators that I made my first film with straight out of film school. Ran a Kickstarter campaign, crowdfunded. Made this tiny micro-budget feature, Farrah Goes Bang, that played at Tribeca Film Festival, won some awards. But still, I was broke, very, more than broke, because I had gone to film school. So I wasn't really able to get work doing anything as a director off of making a micro-budget feature, but I worked as an editor for a while. I always had an eye towards episodic directing because I saw my heroes like Lynn Shelton and other independent filmmakers doing cool television work, and I was like, well, maybe that's a way to make a living actually doing this. So I did some labs. I applied to some labs. I did a director's lab at Fox, made some connections that way, but it wasn't really until I made my second feature, which just took years meeting people, meeting producers that actually were able to build some equity, and it was a film called Equity, to actually make a film that had a slightly higher budget. And that film got me repped by agents, got me a team to really put myself out there as a television director, and that was a kind of key component for me to actually get the television work going, was actually finding representation, but it certainly didn't happen overnight, and that was a whole journey. And once I had representation, even then it wasn't overnight, because I had to kind of, I went on, years, just like general meetings, water bottle tours, whatever they're kind of called these days. But I just met a lot of people, and even then, it was I was on a bigger agent's desk, and she kind of she kind of got overwhelmed, and eventually put me on the desk of a junior agent who I think just had a lot of time and hunger to really connect the dots. And I say that to be my feature that got me repped was a corporate drama, but the first episode of television I ever got was for the Sci-Fi Network, for a show called Blood Drive about flesh-eating cars drag racing across America. So truly, it's not like my feature was a calling card to do that show. It was really about...
Based on a real story, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It was a docuseries. But it was really about kind of having, meeting the right people and actually just really getting along with the showrunners. And directing television is a lot about that. It's about kind of fitting into the culture of a show, more so than having the kind of exact right piece of material that speaks to the show. But everyone gets into television different ways. I mean, it's a whole kind of conversation. I guess that's why we're here. But that's how I ended up directing every episode of television I can get my hands on, which is what you'll see if you look at my credits.
No, it's great. And that, again, it's fascinating that everyone does have their unique origin story. And at some point, it all comes down to perseverance, talent, and just, don't give up. And really, hopefully it'll pay dividends. Carrie, so like Marvin, you started sort of UCB. Was that kind of the goal at first, was performing? What was your plan?
Hi, Marvin. We've never met, but hello. I wrote a spec of The Office, way after people were supposed to be writing specs. And I had lived in LA prior to that, but didn't really know what I was going to do. I was working with bands. I was working in the A&R department at a subsidiary of Universal Music Group, and then I worked at a music publishing company. So when I moved to LA, I thought, I'm going to be working in music. And then the music industry really went to shit, so I picked the other watertight industry to get into, television.
Try journalism. That's another good one.
But yeah, so I just ended up going to UCB because I had been watching SNL and stuff, but I saw in a UCB class a human giant sketch where it's the hardest part of telling your parents you're gay is something about rollerblading, and it was just shot on a shitty DV camera on Venice Beach boardwalk, and I was like, I could do that. So it's okay, they're doing that at UCB. And I met all of my comedy collaborators. I never went to film school. I was predominantly writing sketches on a house sketch team there, which was a lot of work for very little. You know, you're doing weekly meetings, you're paying for coaches just to have like one show a month. So I stopped doing that and I started writing my own like one-act plays, comedy plays, and putting them up at UCB. And then that led to that combined with becoming a writer's assistant at Abominable Pictures, which is kind of like one of the last companies that was doing straight comedy at the time. And I was lucky enough to be a writer's assistant on a bunch of their shows and get my first writing credits on those shows, but it still was never enough until I developed a stage show to pitch as a television show. And then I started to work a little bit more and I got some reps, but a big part of everything kind of like converged at once for me. And directing my own shorts was a big part of that, of getting into television work. Having those calling cards and being able to send them. And my first short was a social realist drama, so like the hardest skirt from UCB Comedy. But, you know, even comedian people know when a drama is good, you know? So having those calling cards, I think, opened doors for me to be like, yeah, we want you to be the writer's assistant, or, you know, those first doors.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned, you know, comedy and drama. I mean, some of the best dramas now are coming from comedians and from comic writers and actors. So fantastic. And finally, Daniel, what was the spark that led you to this interesting business?
I guess started in film school, maybe before that, when I just, you know, got an interest in theater and film. After film school, I came out here at Los Angeles, and my start in television was on Grey's Anatomy as a writer's PA. So that job is, you know, shopping for groceries and getting coffee and picking up dry cleaning, but also learning how to make television. So I started there, worked my way up there, got up to showrunner's assistant, then writer's assistant, all at the same time working on my own stuff, so writing my own specs and making projects on the weekends. I ultimately made an independent pilot. It was a full drama pilot, cop drama set in Chicago in the 80s. That became my sample. So I then tried to leverage that with all the relationships I had built at Grey's. That turned into a shadowing opportunity, which turned into my first episode of television. So at the same time, I was taking that same sample and submitting it to fellowships around town. I did one with Sony. Me and Marvin, I think, did that fellowship together, one with Film Independent, a few others. That created more opportunities based on that original sample. I'm also a writer. I was writing on television shows too in between for a while, but started to focus on directing in the last maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, was directing more the passion, or was there a goal to be a writer, or?
It was always both. I mean, like when I learned about storytelling, it was about writing and directing your own projects. When I got into television, it's more segmented. You have your writers and you have your directors. So I still love both. I was getting more traction in on the directing side, so I just kind of focused more energy on the directing side. But I have plenty of scripts to sell if anybody wants to buy.
See him afterwards. Well, you know, you bring up an interesting point that, you know, for decades, really since the dawn of television, it was considered a writer's medium. But in the advent of the streaming era and the prestige television era, it's really become much more of a director's playground as well. And Meera, I'd be curious to, you know, what you've seen, you know, especially over the course of your career, as the importance of the director has really changed, and the position of the director in the television process has really changed. What have you found?
Yeah, I think more and more shows have fewer and fewer directors, actually, because more directors do more episodes, or directors do more episodes, and that allows a director to really kind of sink their teeth into the material, I think. And I had done earlier, and it doesn't come along very much anymore, but like single episodes that you just take a week to shoot, and you're kind of in and out of there. But now it's like you're kind of expected to be a part of a show for a good chunk of their season, because you're, you know, like most of the gigs are like getting at least 2 or 3 episodes, and I think it's so much. Yeah, absolutely, the director has so much more of a say at the table when they're just around more. Yeah.
Yeah. And Marvin, what have you found in, you know, sort of, you know, creating shows and working on shows both as a writer but also as a director? How has that changed in this business?
How has it changed? I mean, right now it seems like it's near impossible. Like there's just way less production jobs, you know, like way less of the opportunities available. Like you're talking about more, you know, directors getting, you know, so many more things are shot in blocks. So there is less of those single episodes to be able to get. I think, but in terms of, you know, even with like the strike or with the new deal, like being able to have, you know, directors now have more of a process and say in the post-production process, which was like not a thing for up until last year. Being able to like actually get notes on your cut before, and usually it was like you would have 2 days and you would deliver the cut, and then, you know, maybe your cut makes it to the air, but probably not. And I think the common, you know, advice is don't watch your episode when it comes out. Like, this is just, it is the writer's, it's still the showrunner's like decision at the end of the day. The director comes in, they do it. I think I definitely, for myself, going into Gente-fied, there was so much being able to go in, and for me, there was a lot of having to understand why things work the way that they did. Like the tone meeting happening on the last day of prep, like made no sense to me. Like that was like little things like this, and maybe people don't even know what that is, but because I remember having to learn all that through like the Sony program and the Disney program, really understanding what are the differences from, you know, when you're a filmmaker, independent filmmaker, where you're like the director is really the lead creative on everything, and then kind of coming in and understanding what the job is on a TV set, on a TV production. So I think that there's a lot of, I don't know, I haven't been in it as long. I haven't worked on as many TV shows. Like I mentioned, like my first thing was like coming from indie, doing these small budget things, and then all of a sudden jumping to, on my very first time ever being on a union set was when I'm making my show. And learning what that was like and having to figure out like, oh, okay, like I can't move nearly as fast as when I have like, you know, crew of 20 people. And having to really figure out how to, I'm like, oh, I'm used to doing 5, 6, 7 jobs. I don't have to communicate quite as many of the things that are in my head. I just kind of work at the speed of thought, and having to figure out that I'm like, oh no, I gotta just like, you know, delegate. But I think what has changed is definitely because the technology, digital technology, being able to create a more cinematic image with like on a much faster timeline that TV has, like I do think that directors are bringing in so much more to being able to, you know, expand the visual storytelling on TV.
Yeah, no, and that was, you sort of answered the question in terms of what the transition was like and going from doing webisodes to an actual episodic show for a streaming service. Was there anything else that sort of surprised you, or something that you learned that now is sort of maybe part of the foundation of how you work?
So, you know, one of the biggest things that I learned going from doing the digital series especially, and then adapting it into a TV show, I did the digital series. The digital series was for me an intention to just practice making a movie, because it was like my longest production up to that date, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just practice like getting ready to make a movie, and then that thing's gonna go to Sundance. That was the plan I had in my head. Not in, like, you know, literally the year that we premiered at Sundance was the first year that they ever took submissions for digital series. Like it wasn't a thing before that. So it was never in my head that we're gonna go take this thing to Sundance and then make it a TV show. Like it just kind of, the doors opened and we walked through them. And, but the biggest thing that I really feel like I learned was one of the mistakes I feel like I made. I had gone through the Sony program and the Disney program, and you're learning how TV directing works and how you're supposed to prep TV directing, and it's very different from what I had been doing as a filmmaker and as an indie filmmaker. And I went into making the show in those first episodes trying to do direct TV the way you're supposed to direct TV versus going in and treating it like the way that I did this digital series, the way that I prepped it, the way that I visualized it and storyboarded it. And so I feel like the biggest thing I learned for myself was realizing I was like, oh, I need to still there's things logistically that you need to figure out with the TV schedule and the timeline, but I kind of put my own creative voice on the back burner to be able to prioritize the way you're supposed to do TV. And that I feel was the thing that I had to learn firsthand. I was like, oh, like I still need to be able to come in, and that was what the second season was for us, was like coming in and being like, let me go back to how we did this in the beginning, what got us here in the first place, of coming back and treating and being visual first, being more director-driven first. I mean, kind of having that, just prepping it the way that made sense to me and not trying to do it some other way, the other way that you're supposed to do it.
Now that you have your feature out, is that sort of the new avenue, or are you sort of looking to go back to episodic? or
Yeah,
what's-
I'm working on developing a few TV projects. I've been taking out TV projects. It is tough out in these streets, I would say. But features for me was always the dream, and I think what TV has become is like, oh, you can be an artist in this space. At least if you're show running and you get to be in charge and you get to you make your show, it is a fun, because I come from UCB and come improv, like I love the collaboration and I love being able to work with a team and figure out and build out the vision and just, here's my idea and somebody fucking spikes it and it's just like great, like it's just at the end of the day it's better. But I think the common thing that I hear with, especially with episodic directing, it's like, if you did a great job, great, the showrunner's gonna get the credit. And if you did a bad job, then the showrunner's gonna get the credit. Like that is still kind of, it's still that medium, and I think for myself, the transition into film was ultimately just going back to like, this is really what I wanted to be doing in the first place, is being able to come in and try to figure out, like, working on my craft as a director and as a filmmaker. And you don't really get to do that on a TV show, because if you're a guest director, because you're kind of in a sense, the babysitter. You're coming in, they have this, maybe here's the sandbox, but you got to play within this sandbox. You can't come in and be like, no, we're doing Legos. Like, like that is kind of a little bit more of what I've seen, at least, what the differences are between TV and film.
Yeah. And Daniel, you've obviously done a lot of episodic, a lot of broadcast too, which is nice. Broadcast is back. I don't know if you heard. That's the.
I haven't gotten that newsletter.
You did work on Matlock, which is back, which did very well this past season. But what do you find as someone who is coming in for one or two episodes, but then these are shows that still go for, say, 15, 20, 22 episodes a season. What is that like to kind of come in as an episodic director? How tough is that to sort of, do that versus being on a show more long-term?
I'll tell you about my first experience. The first show I ever did was a show called The Blacklist. And it was a very popular show. I think it was maybe in its 4th or 5th season, something like that. And my whole plan was to kind of fake it as a proper television director, like come in and do everything that I had seen other people do. And what I learned was it wasn't altogether different from any of the things that I had done before. It was just a matter of scale, a matter of kind of expertise at the head of every department. But a production meeting was just a production meeting, except this production meeting had 30 people in it instead of like 2 of my friends. So like doing it kind of demystified the process for me. At the end of the day, I was talking to actors, I was setting up shots, I was trying to create a feel and a moment for an audience. I was guiding them through the story. So in that respect, it was pretty much the same. In terms of your experience on every show, it's just like any other thing in the freelance world. Every show is going to be a little bit different. Sometimes you come into a show and they are eager for something fresh and new and different. Sometimes they want you to keep the ship going in the direction that it's going. So you have to get a sense of what's required. And I came up in a writer's room. Like I worked for writers. I've been a writer on shows. I understand, what showrunners need from directors. I think it's really important for a director to kind of come into this space that's already successful and already going and already working and try to be additive and figure out what you can bring to the table. Feel like at the essence, directing is about perspective. And so that's what I have to offer, that and whatever expertise that I have. So I try to make an estimation of what they need from me and deliver that, and hopefully everybody goes away happy.
Yeah. It's sort of the ongoing theme, the thread of this table so far has been it's tough out there on these streets, right? So, Auri, give us something to hope for. What's give us some positive. Or just give us the truth. Pull the Band-Aid off.
Well, listen, it is tough. However, one of the things that my colleagues and I talk about on the weekly, specifically in our director meetings, is while it's tough, there are opportunities out there, and you just really have to focus and see where you can be very targeted. And one of the reasons it's tough is, as Meera was saying, there's a lot of shows now, because of the contraction that's been happening, because of the reduction in budgets, there are shows that will now hire only 2 directors for 8 or 10 episodes. On broadcasts, yes, it's back. It's healthy with shows getting ordered to 20, 22 episodes. But like on a series like Matlock, for example, second season, they're bringing back a lot of their season 1 directors. Or it's a combination of that and whoever Kathy Bates has worked with in the past. So that makes it a little bit difficult. But that's not to say that there isn't opportunities out there. We as reps just have to make 4 times more the calls than what we had to before. And what we encourage our clients to do while we wait for an opportunity is actually not wait. Marvin, I think you said it, you're just creating. Just continue to go out there and do a short, do something, and continue to create, because even doing something on your own that nobody paid for, or you have to invest a little bit of money on, work begets work. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's tough, but there are some opportunities out there. And again, just have to really look under the hood and see where those are, and see where those connections are between what our clients have done in the past, the relationships that they have, and some of them have pivoted from working on some shorts to now doing their own features, whether they finance them independently or go out and find the money.
Okay, I'm going to give you something else, positive and
Yeah.
optimistic. I'm going to point to Carrie. We're turning our attention to Carrie, because Carrie was worked on 2 of the most creative shows of the past couple of years, with both Murderville and Jury Duty, and the fact that Jury Duty was so lauded, Emmy nominations, and it's coming back for another season, although Carrie will kill all of us before she reveals anything of season 2.
Our producers put up butcher paper over like our whiteboards so that the cleaners wouldn't see what we were writing. I was like, that's what I've been running my material by every morning.
It's like Marvel level security.
Yeah.
But, in all seriousness, when we talk about sort of the state of the industry, there are some real creative, swings that people are taking, and those are 2 good examples. And, talk a little bit about, especially with Jury Duty, what that was like in, creating a show that was so ambitious and audacious. This thing, like I was telling you beforehand, could have just collapsed. You guys were teetering on the edge the entire time, and you pulled it off. But that must have been exhilarating, and also the reaction must have been really heartening too, to see people really rewarded something with that kind of creativity and just that kind of the amount of effort that you guys put into that show. Tell us what the sort of that experience in the moment was. When you guys were creating this, were you nervous that this thing wasn't going to react, or that you weren't going to be able to pull it off, or what was that experience like, and just sort of teetering on the edge of something that was kind of fragile to pull off?
It was really cool, and we definitely did not expect to have any kind of, when I signed the contract, it was Amazon, and then it was IMDb TV, and then they said it's going to be Freevee. And so I had worked on so many things that, like Sony Crackle was my first writer's credit, and I think that's owned by the Chicken Soup for the Soul people now.
It is. Did you have a show at Quibi, by the way?
I pitched Quibi like the day before they went under.
Rest in peace.
But yeah, I
R.I.P.
kind of
Quibi.
was like, I did Go 90. We found out they were dead in the room. All of those.
Oh, you did all the, Yahoo Screen, like.
I didn't do Yahoo Screen, thank God. No. I did
Those are good
CISO.
independent platforms that
CISO.
you started on.
Yeah, and I think that was like comedy. I think, people were willing, Amazon was willing, I think, to give us what was chump change to them to make the show. And so we had a lot of creative power. They weren't really overseeing us too much, and they were trusting us to do what we were going to do. And that was like my first real writer's room where I wasn't the writer's assistant first, then becoming a writer. And it was like the hardest show to write, because how do you write a show for a protagonist who you don't know? But it was really, really fun, and I feel like I'm the only person who made my money back on improv classes after working on both of those shows. But what was cool about them was that you're also producing a show. Even as the writer in the writer's room, there's a producer brain going on, right? So, okay, if we're going to do this bit and he doesn't do that, you have to have a map. And so I think that's also where being an independent director helped me. And I was saying earlier, it almost felt like an indie film set because everybody had the same amount of care, like anybody could ruin the whole thing. And so it was a really different experience than being on set on other shows where, you know, you're sitting around all day and then waiting for a take. You know, we were just up and live and doing it. And it was really fun, and I think I really got to apply my background in improvisational comedy and to these two shows, and I hope we get to keep making more of them, but I also one day would like to write on something that is fully scripted.
Yeah, where you
Where I
can,
like know what's gonna happen, but then those things can really get messed up, so.
right, you never know. Well, Meera, I'm kind of curious for you because I mentioned some of your projects, and they're all big projects, big, one is from, Marvel. They all have, big, they've got canon, they've got showrunners that sometimes are stars in their own right. What is that like for you to kind of come in? There's a huge fan base, but of course that fan base cuts both ways. And do you enjoy going into these big sort of franchises, or does there always come with a little bit of trepidation?
I mean, the good part about episodic directing is that, like, ultimately you are in service of the showrunner's vision, and they're the ones really carrying that weight, to be honest. So I think you're there to help them feel relieved of that pressure by, like, doing your job and making your days and giving them good material. So I don't directly feel that pressure, but I'm around it when I'm on those shows, for sure. The pressure to live up to the fan base's expectations is, like, always there, and the fan base is, like, always a part of the conversation on shows like that, whether it's The Walking Dead or, I mean, Marvel was
This is safe space. Don't worry, they're not here.
it was a moment in time that Hollywood will always remember.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there. When I did Miss Marvel, it was like they were just starting to make television. Like, WandaVision hadn't even come out, and they were trying to, I think, break the way television was being made, and so there wasn't a showrunner around. So I'll say, like, that was the one show I did where I felt like it was a real challenge, because, like, even though, the kind of systematized way in which television is made can sometimes feel constricting if you're coming from indie film, which I also do come from, and I find myself, like, somewhat feeling frustrated by how codified everything is in television. It works for a reason, and I saw firsthand when it broke down, like, how quickly everything else can break down, to say the least. I don't have to go into details, but it was not the way it should be done. And so I mean, and I think, I think the fans were really, like, on top of them from the minute they were announcing, like, the cast on that show. So it was a very intense time to be in that ecosystem. But yeah, I think in terms of directing on those kind of shows, I mean, another example, I recently did an episode of Star Trek, and it's, we talk about, it's just every meeting canon comes up, and, like, there are people on that show that are staffed specifically because of their knowledge base of canon.
Yeah, that Bible must be, like, this thick by now.
Yeah, and, you're just surrounded by that kind of expertise when the stakes are that high. They just kind of won't let you fail when it comes to that, because the fans are so important to those shows.
Oh, they're chill on the internet. Don't worry. They're chill.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I definitely, as part of my prep work on shows like that, spend a lot of time on the message boards and reading, like, about what the fans want. Because I do think the job of a director is to be the stand-in for the audience, is to be the first audience for the material. So you want to be true to what they want, for sure.
So I'm curious, is there a piece of advice you would give your young self now that you've had the experience that you wish you would have known maybe at the start of your career? And this goes for any of you. Anyone can speak up. If there is we're giving the kids here in the audience some advice. Marvin, looks like you're about to.
Yeah, I have one thing lately that I'm coming back to, which is realizing that I have to keep doing the things that I did in the beginning that got me here. Like, that doesn't stop ever. And I think I had to, earlier this year, really come to that realization. Like, I had kept it in the back of my head, but it's something that I bring into the forefront in the sense of, we're talking about the TV landscape and how tough it is. And more than anything, I'm like, oh, well, the way I got here was, again, like I mentioned, not waiting for permission by shooting stuff, like focusing on what I have and not instead of what I don't have. And just making something, because the reality is, and I think what everybody here, I think, is primed, I think a lot of you all are probably filmmakers that are screening something at the festival. What I think y'all are more primed for than a lot of, even TV writers and folks that have been working in the industry for a long time is like being able to make something with nothing, being able to work with what you have, and being able to not wait for permission, and being able to actually have a piece of product, or not a product, but like having something that you can kind of look at and be like, I finished this, this is done, like this is the calling card, or it's gonna help me get to the next thing. And I think where I'm at is I'm like, well, the way I got into TV was by making a digital series that we had no idea where we were gonna like stream it, you know, like to carry, to Gary's point, we were trying to pitch that to like full screen and YouTube Red, and we couldn't sell it on the digital side because it didn't have influencers in it. But then the TV folks are like, yo, this is a TV show, let's figure this out. So we were in this little in-between, but I think what got me there was like, we finished it, I made it. There was no guesswork involved in like what the tone is, what it feels like, what the language is like, how do we do the Spanglish, like how do we picture Boyle Heights, and how do we see East LA in a way that we don't see it ever, in a way that isn't the fucking trauma porn that it's always put in. And so I think that's where I'm at, in the sense of like, I'm just going right back to how I started, which is why I have my mic on and making content, because I'm like, oh, I'm a fucking content maker and I'm a filmmaker. Like, I'm both. I'm a first-gen, I'm an anchor baby from Bakersfield, California. I don't have the privilege of not doing every fucking thing so that I stay working, which means I gotta do the content, I gotta write, I gotta direct, I'm gonna produce it, I'm gonna go figure out how to finance this, I'm gonna figure out, you know, what actors do I know, who am I gonna put in this thing? Like, there's no, yeah, I put myself last year in a position where after I finished my movie, where I'm waiting around and waiting for somebody to give me permission to go, and I was like, oh, this is not working for me, I hate this. And so I think what you're seeing now, what I'm hearing is there's a lot of different production companies now that are talking about trying to follow the Shane Gillis model, the Mark Duplass model of like, why don't we go finance series on our own? Why don't we figure out how do we shoot something, an 8-episode, 10-episode show in one location with, you know, just some great talent, and like we just go do it. And that's where I think Shane Gillis is living the dream. I just heard that he got, you know, I don't know, $7 million to make the second season, and they just give him the money and they go, and he comes back with the cut. Like, I'm like, fuck, dude, like, like, there's nobody there on set bothering you? Like, amazing. So I think, like, right now, going and just creating and producing something, and if you have, like, a web series or a full-on half-hour show or an hour-long, whatever, like, just fucking go make it. Because the way it worked out for me was that you know, you want to be the moving train that everybody else wants to hop on, ultimately. And so while everybody else is waiting for permission and trying to get something going and getting things going, if you're already done, like, it's just, you're just in a different position to be able to kind of to move and make moves happen.
Yeah, we live in an era now, distribution is everywhere. So there's the opportunity. Where can we find you, Marvin, by the way? What's the
find me on Marvin, at Marvin Lemus, and but I spelled Lemus the way it's supposed to be pronounced. It's Lemoose, like a French moose.
Lemus? Nice.
I did it that way because people be saying my name wrong. Lemus, it's not Lemus. Anyways.
Well, to extend a little bit upon that is this independent filmmaking of making a series independently is going to be a new model. It's something that has been done the last couple of years, but yes, to your point, Shane Gillis, I mean, Tires, I think that was done for $1 million, maybe two, or,
I think.
yeah.
And then Netflix bought it for what,
Yeah.
$5?
Yes.
And he owns that entire
and he owns
show.
all of it,
Yeah.
yes. So that's why I said earlier, continue to create, whether it's something that you finance or go find the financing for, because you will find a place for it. I'll give you guys a quick example. I have a director client who I discovered off her short at South by a couple of years ago. And the short was basically a sample for her feature. And rather than waiting for the money, she raised the money herself, put up some money for herself. It just premiered about 3 weeks ago at La Leaf, which is the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival. Premiered to a standing ovation, and now she's got a couple of offers from distributors. So, you know, again, she didn't sit there and wait for somebody to come and give her the money. So,
Yeah, see, here we go. More positivity.
Yes,
There's
that's
more
what I'm here for.
opportunity. Absolutely. And you mentioned Mark Duplass. I mean, Penelope was one of the greatest shows of last year. That was a fantastic little indie show that would have never been made by a major. So one of the hot topics right now is runaway production and the fact that it is tough to do production in Southern California. There is movement. There is talk of trying to bring more production back, tax credits, et cetera. Audrey, again, to kind of put you on the spot, What are you and your colleagues feeling? A little more optimistic that we can get some more production back here, or is the genie out of the bottle?
I mean, yeah, we are feeling more optimistic, and we just really hope that people put their money where their mouth is, particularly people that are part of, the people that make the decisions in our state of California. And, we don't know how long that's going to take, but there have been a lot of conversations of really making a concerted effort to keep production in LA. And we'll see. I think we'll know in the next year or two.
What's it going to take to get you positive? What are your big concerns?
I'm
what can we
definitely
do?
positive. I'm more contextual, but still positive. I feel like I've just seen in my kind of sphere more opportunities coming along. A lot of directors who I'm friends with are working steadily. I think it's, everyone has a story about what Hollywood looks like. My thing is just kind of focusing on your own journey. I feel like it's the best thing. I always tell people, don't compare yourself to your peers. I think everyone's opportunity is going to come in a different way at a different time. One strategy works really good for one filmmaker. Another strategy works equally good for someone else. Not trying to make what works for someone else work for you if it doesn't feel organic to you, I think is really important. So that's kind of where my positivity lives, is within, and it's about following your journey, like, charting your own course, telling stories in the way that you want to, and not getting so caught up in the conversation of what the end result might be.
Yeah.
Off that, it's not about them, it's about you. Because I think one of my biggest pieces of advice, and this is just as a TV writer, not a TV director yet, but is when you're in that room on the water bottle tour or whatever, in the beginning, you're like, oh, what do they want? I can, but once I started speaking about myself and my work and the themes I'm exploring, doors started opening, and if we're all making films and we all have something to say, it's going to be different than what the other person has to say. And so it just is that one meeting that you have to have that will get you into the door. And I think what will set you apart is knowing what you make and being able to connect the dots for them about why you're good for the show. And just having that confidence, because you'll walk out of a room and not get a job, and then that showrunner will hire you on another thing. So just always speaking with confidence and not feeling small when you're in those rooms or talking to those people, because they're just people.
We have time now for some questions from, okay, we already got one right over here. Wasted no time.
Hello. So I guess I have a question that is for anybody that relates to the moment we're in right now. Let's say you've done the thing, you've created and directed a series, it premieres at a Tier 1 festival, you're getting the meetings, you have not booked your first episode of something outside that you've created independently, and that's what you desperately want more than anything. What do you do?
Make another thing.
Yep.
Once you finish that, that's done. I don't even know what that is. You have to have 4 more things. It's so crazy.
Sure,
it's true.
But
Can you clarify the question? I didn't
yeah.
fully get it. What's the thing you want?
Something
I'm so
that just, okay, I'll give my context. I just created a series that premiered at Sundance this year, and I'm getting lots and lots of meetings. Right now, I'm going on several a week. I do have projects lined up to go next, but I'm attached to an indie series, but I really want a studio episode as well. And I know it's a crazy, crazy time, but at the same time, you've said there is stuff happening. It exists. It's maybe harder to get. What outside of the things, yes, it's a given. I have more things. I'm making more things. What outside of that can I do to position myself for the jobs that exist?
Well, I think you're doing that. You're going out on meetings, right? And those meetings, I would highly recommend, if you're not doing this already, make sure you keep in touch with the people that you're meeting with. I don't know who you're meeting with, but let's say you meet with a showrunner whose show premieres, a couple of weeks. Make sure that the day that it premieres, you email them after that saying, congratulations, I saw your episode, I thought it was great. Maintaining those relationships because that's what's going to get you the job while concurrently, as Carrie said, continuing to do your other projects. Because right now, it is really hard to break in a first-time director that has never directed an episode. And that's just because budgets are constrained and nobody wants to take a chance. And that's unfortunately the reality. But that doesn't mean that the opportunity is not going to come. It's just not going to be today, tomorrow, maybe not the next day. It might take a year or two, but during that time, you can make your other projects.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your question. Right here in the front.
Hello. My question is for both Marvin and Auri. Because you both spoke about something that I think is really important, which was we filmmakers have to stop waiting for someone to just come out of the sky and be like, hey, here you go, $5 million, go make your next movie, because the truth is that that's not how it is, and we gotta go and do it ourselves. I understand, and pardon me if this is a silly question, I hope it's not, but I understand that, for instance, for feature films, when we do that, like, let's say we filmmakers finance ourselves a feature film or find financing, there's a big market of film festivals ready for you to go out and sell those feature films, right? But for miniseries specifically, I know there are festivals that do have like, not miniseries, sorry, like series or web series. Like, I know there are festivals that have categories for that, but it's not obviously as big as for feature films. So I guess my question is, if one does decide to do an independent series, what are the best ways one as an independent filmmaker can go out and show it to the world and sell it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say one thing, one thing that I learned firsthand, I'll like kind of tell a quick story. Like, I remember when I got to go to the first like dinner for the filmmakers of Sundance when we got in with Gente-fied. And I showed up and I'm meeting a couple people, and I meet a programmer for Sundance, and he like saw my name on my name tag, and he was like, oh, you directed Vamonos, which was my short film that I had done just before Gente-fied, which was my first festival run. And I was like, what the fuck, like, how does he know Vamonos? And I realized that like, oh, the Sundance programmers are programming for all the other festivals when they're not at Sundance. Being in the network, being in the ecosystem, like, don't look down on or discount, even if it's not a tier 1 festival. Like, I realized, I was like, I'm showing up to Sundance, which was my dream, and I already have a reputation here. Like, what the fuck? Like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't understand that. And so I learned it firsthand that I'm like, oh, my last short was a part of getting me here. Like, even though I didn't play, it was very much, it was an LGBT, like, focused short, and it played all the LGBT film festival circuit. And I was like, oh, like, I really wanted to go to Sundance. I really wanted to go to Tribeca. We didn't get quite there. But, like, then going to Sundance and realizing that people already knew my name and my work, like, blew my mind. I had no clue. And so what I will say is, don't discount, even if you're not at that level, or if the thing that you make doesn't get there, like, you're still building your reputation, you're still building your name, you're still getting your work seen and out there, and it's going to help that project or the very next one. That's, from my experience, what I would say. But to answer your specific question, I don't know if there's any specific festivals or categories or anything to look at, but I do think that just getting your work out there, like, no matter how you're getting it out there, is going to be building. The other thing I would say is learn how to really work socials and learn how to promote and build out. Like, the thing that I learned how to do early on with the YouTube videos was I had to learn how to be my own publicist and my own, like, marketing. Like, everything that I learned in YouTube in creating viral content was literally directly all the things that I put into being able to launch a film like Dear White People, which I worked on the viral film campaign for that, and launching and building an audience for Gente-fied before we even premiered it at Sundance. So all of that shit, as an indie filmmaker, you kind of got to wear all those different hats, and I think that that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and getting it out there on YouTube, which may not sound sexy to you, YouTube is the #1 watched platform. It really is.
Over Netflix, over Hulu, over everything, dude.
Yes. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe people in the audience know this, but there used to be a website specifically for shorts where
Vimeo?
anybody could, was it? No, it specifically has shorts on the, no, I think it was, is it Shorts TV? Short of the week. I have heard of agents find their directors on shorts of the week. I don't know if you can upload it for free. I'm under the impression you can, but even. It has to be chosen? Okay. Okay. But that's an avenue as well. But, even Instagram, that leads to your YouTube.
All right, thanks. Let's see, we'll go, how about over here in the middle?
And so, yeah, just to kind of follow up on that, with a world that's so saturated, everyone's making content, but we all have this dream to, get to that place, to have, an elevated TV, film. How do we stand out? What advice to us to stand out and show that, we are committed and, would professional in that way? So, yeah, how do we stand out in this world?
I don't know, do you know Timothy Chalamet? Can you get him in your movie?
I think applying to those, like I did the AFI directing workshop for women, and I know you guys were saying you did a lot of the director programs. I've applied, not gotten in, but writing those essays and putting those applications together, I feel like that really makes you stand out, because like when you can like speak your director's statement just conversationally and you know it like the back of your hand, that's, I think, what would make you stand out to me, at least.
I have one thought, or a couple thoughts. One thing that I always come back to is when all the work that I'm putting together, like, I don't remember where I picked this up, but it's turned into this saying that I come back to a lot, which is, if you're not, with how much noise there is, like, to your point, like, the amount of minutes of fucking content uploaded every minute, every hour, the best thing that has worked for me that I continue to lean on is that the best way to cut through all that noise is that, like, if you're not telling me your secrets, then why should I be listening? Like, and I come back to this sense of, like, I always bring up the analogy of, like, if I'm sitting at a coffee shop with my headphones in and I'm hearing somebody talk shit or, like, oh my God, I fucking cheated on my wife or whatever, like, next to her, I'm like, I'm gonna hit pause and I'm gonna listen. Like, I've heard that story a million fucking times, but I want to listen to this shit because it's just juicy, right? And so the best thing that I always come back to is, like, I need to be telling my secrets, which to me means, like, making it as personal as I can. Like, what am I putting into, even with the film, like, Alexander, like, I came into it and I saw the script and I was like, okay, great, this is a fun action comedy, but what I'm going to make this really about is about a little brown boy that needs to be heard by his parents, and then he's being not heard, he's being neglected and ignored, and that was what the fucking personal element was, and that I needed to infuse into the story. And that's what got me the goddamn job, like being able to go in and pitch Disney and get the gig when I had never done a movie before. And I think that, I don't know, I stick to that very, like, closely. I think it's, when I think about every Amblin movie, like E.T. is near and dear to my heart, and the scene that is seared into my memory is not all the magic and the aliens and the E.T. phone home, it's the scene at the beginning where the family is, like, arguing because dad's in Mexico with some other woman. Like, that is the shit that, like, oh fuck, I'm in it. Like, I'm watching, I'm in it here, this family is broken, I get that. And it's just truth, it's real. Like, there's just, I don't know, so I think, and I feel like it's just something that I really, really believe, and so I just kind of lean on that.
I think that's exactly, I think if your goal is to stand out, you might be stepping away from yourself, Like, I think the goal should be to get closer to yourself. Right.
And I think the question is different for every project, right? How do I stand out for this specific thing? Or how do I stand out for the movie I'm about to release? And kind of like what Marvin was saying, like, I made a movie about a girl who went to rehab, her mom took her to rehab and left her there. That happened to me when I was a kid. I got on every single newsletter of Al-Anon, AA people, blah, 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 blah. And then just like, it was on no budge. And someone at a meeting asked me, how did you get that many people to see this, And it's like, yeah, I was on Facebook groups talking to, like, grandmas who raise their grandchildren and stuff like that. And I think having that gumption and, like, that kind of, like, I'm not gonna wait for anyone to do it also kind of makes you stand out in general.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, don't think that you have to stand out to everybody. You just have to think about, who is it that I want to stand out for? And it goes back to, what is your project? and be targeted in that way.
And I'll leave you with this, since you brought up E.T. and the fact that it really was about a broken family. You heard recently that Spielberg admitted that they cut a scene where E.T. was making the moves on the mom, and that probably was weird, right? Yeah.
Good choice. Listen,
But I would,
Gotta
I
make
would still,
choices.
I'm still, yeah, kind of curious. I do want to see that footage one day. But thank you so much to our panelists.